So let me give you an example of a couple of really big strikes, and we'll talk more in detail about them tomorrow. But here are three really big strikes that you'll see take place in the late 1800s, early 1900s during the Second Industrial Revolution. And the first, the Great Railroad Strike is a great example. And so here on the right-hand side, we see railroad workers and their families. See the innocent woman here, someone who might be a little bit younger. And these workers are protesting for better pay, better working conditions, all these things we've talked about. And the owners of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, the B&O, did not want to give in to those demands. They actually got the police and the National Guard called out to open fire on these strikers, trying to get them to break up and go back to work. And it was remarkably deadly, these riots. And they spread all across the country as workers were attempting to fight for themselves to have a better working and living condition. 100 dead, 10 million in damages, troops being used to restore order in three different states. So a very serious string of strikes in the Great Railroad Strike, which became really the first nationwide protest, where you see these state protests all over the place. And there's two others that are listed for you: Haymarket Riot and the Pullman Strike. We'll talk more about those in detail as we go through the lesson. I think the only thing to add here that you really need to know, obviously the workers are upset about different things, whether it's a fight over the number of hours in a workday, or whether it's over cutting wages and something along those lines. But I think when it comes to the Pullman strike, there is something worth noting that'll help us in class tomorrow. And this will help us in class tomorrow, because what we're looking at here is the factory of the Pullman Railroad Car Works. And you can see that listed here, Pullman Car Company Works. This is the actual factory component of it, where they would make the railroad cars. But the man Pullman, he actually built this entire town. It's now a part of Chicago. But he built the entire town in order to control his workers. So he put in a lumber yard for the factory, and an athletic set of athletic fields, and a market house where you could go shopping, and a hotel for visitors, and a public square, and a theater, and all kinds of things were put in to the Pullman town to make it attractive to workers to want to work here in this factory. And what's important to note here is what's going to be inside this market house, this central area where workers were. And what you need to know is that prices were raised. Prices were raised on Pullman workers, even as Pullman and other workers saw their wages cut, making life even more difficult.